Hope you guys are all okay and all good, and welcome back to Book Break. The perceptive among you will notice that no, I am not Jean. I am subbing in for Jean today because apparently I didn't mess it up last time I did this. My name is George Lester. You can find me in most places at the George Lester, and all links to my social media places will be in the description box below. I am here today to talk to you about children's classics. As someone who works in children's books, as a child, I had not actually read any or many classics at all. When I was growing up, they honestly came across to me as really quite stuffy and old-fashioned, and I wasn't really interested in anything that wasn't Harry Potter or a series of unfortunate events. Now that I'm a little bit more grown up, I am now discovering the sheer joy that is children's classics. So I am here to tell you that one, it is never too late to start reading children's classics, and two, here are some of my favourites to get you started. A really good place to start when it comes to reading classics is to go for something a little bit familiar. So, a really good place to start would be The Jungle Book by Rudyard Kipling. There are so few people I know that won't have seen the animated version of this, or even the live action version that was done by Disney just last year. The most surprising thing when it comes to reading The Jungle Book for the first time is that it's actually more like a book of short stories. While it does still follow the familiar characters of Mowgli, Bagheera and Baloo the bear, there is so much more to this book than what you get in the Disney film. If anything, I would say that this book is actually suited more to older children than it would be to perhaps the younger children that the film is geared towards. There's so much that you can take from the lyrical and actually occasionally quite beautiful prose of Rudyard Kipling. So, not a bad place to start with The Jungle Book. In keeping with the theme of things that are familiar to you, I would thoroughly recommend The Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum. I'd had this edition on my shelf for quite some time and never got round to reading it. I only read it in the last year or so. It would appear that the classic film featuring Judy Garland actually stayed a lot more true to the original story than The Jungle Book did. There is so much of this that I can still recognise in the film, and so much of it that actually gets left out, and it was an absolute joy to visit Oz in this way. For anyone who is a fan of the film, for anyone who is maybe even a fan of the musical Wicked on in the West End, this adds a completely new dimension to my understanding of the wonderful world of Oz. The film actually sticks so close to the story that is told in this book, with one exception being the red ruby slippers, the iconic red ruby slippers, which are in fact silver in this book. I loved revisiting the world of Oz in this way and found absolute joy in Dorothy's story and the adventure that she goes on with the Tin Man, the Scarecrow and the Cowardly Lion. I thoroughly recommend this as both a lover of The Wizard of Oz, a lover of the musical Wicked, and just a lover of books in general. It's a gorgeous little nugget of children's literature that I cannot praise highly enough. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. The next book on this list would be Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. Another book that was adapted into a gorgeous, light, fluffy and fun Disney film that actually has a much darker undertone to it. I was incredibly surprised when I first read this book. Actually, I listened to this book. I listened to the audiobook, which I listened to an edition that is read by Jim Dale. I was incredibly surprised at how dark it was, but also how beautiful and whimsical J.M. Barrie's writing is. It's a really interesting contrast. There's some really dark moments in it, some really quite brutal content, but then you have this gorgeous writing that runs through it all the way from the start right to the very end. It still tells the story of the Darling family and the children who don't want to grow up and aren't quite ready to grow up, and the boy who visits them in the middle of the night and whisks them off to Neverland. Peter is as impetuous and impulsive as ever, the carefree eternal child that we all know and love. Although this childish obliviousness actually lends itself more to like a selfish attitude that Peter has, and you even get that in Tinkerbell, who's often shown as quite kind-hearted in the film, even though she's a bit mischievous. In this, she's quite treacherous and quite dark-hearted, and it's very, very interesting to read, and the dynamics of all the characters in that way changes, and it changes the way you look at Neverland in general. It's truly brilliant, and again, I can't speak highly enough of J.M. Barrie's writing in this. It's so light and airy. It just kind of floats across the page. It's stunning. Next up on this list is the Milly-Molly-Mandy storybook by Joyce Lankester Brisley. This edition actually features illustrations from Joyce Lankester Brisley herself. Gorgeous black and white line art of the girl in the iconic pink and white candy striped dress. This features 21 of the twee little adventures of Milly-Molly-Mandy, little friend Susan and Billy Blunt. I say twee, but I mean it as a good thing. It harks back to a simpler time of Famous Five-esque adventures of blackberry picking and running a shop, and the writing style is really quaint and quite sweet of this tiny little town where everyone seems to know each other. It's nostalgic and stunning and iconic, and I wasn't even aware of it until quite recently, and I'm so glad that I know of it now. this too. And last but by no means least, and this list I feel for me would not be complete without this book on it. I have been a huge fan of this for a very, very long time, and I remember I studied it for my A-level English, and that is Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Now, this is not the most practical edition to be carrying around with yourself if you want to start reading classics. There are much smaller editions that will fit into your bag. However, I couldn't resist the opportunity to show off the sheer gorgeousness of this book. I feel like there will not be a single person watching this video who will not have heard of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Whether it's from the Disney film or the Tim Burton adaptations, wherever it is that you have found Alice, I am sure that she is possibly one of the most iconic classic children's literature characters out there. And the original story, let me tell you, it's quite a trip. The language is odd and playful. Alice is brattish and occasionally spoilt, but for me at least, I am intrigued by her, and I'm absolutely fascinated about her journey through Wonderland and all of the different characters she's meeting, from the Mad Hatter to the March Hare to the Mock Turtle to the absolutely iconic Queen of Hearts. Every character is more eccentric than the last, and the sublime nonsense that Lewis Carroll creates in this book is just an absolute sight. I feel like I found in these books as an adult something I would not have found in them as a child. It is never too late to start reading children's classics and brushing up on your knowledge. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to put a like on it, to subscribe if you want to see more from the lovelies at Book Break. Leave us a comment down below and let us know what your favourite children's classics are. I have been George. This has been Book Break, and with any luck, I will see you soon. Bye!